Your entire life can change in a single moment, a single decision. But most people never experience that breakthrough because they hesitate, they wait, they overthink. And every time you delay, your future slips further away. The truth is, success doesn't wait for you. Opportunities don't wait for you. Life rewards the ones who move fast, who decide with certainty, who act before fear talks them out of their greatness. Today, you stop delaying. Today, you take back your power. Today, you decide. Every transformation in your life begins with a decision. Not a wish, not a hope, not a someday, a decision. A real decision has power behind it. It redirects your focus, it cuts off every other possibility, and it tells your mind, this is where we're going. Most people never get what they want because they never truly decide. They think about it, they talk about it, they imagine it, but they don't commit. And the moment you fail to commit, you leave the door cracked, open for doubt, fear, hesitation, and distraction to walk right in and take over. When you look back at the times in your life when everything changed, it wasn't luck, it wasn't timing, it wasn't circumstance. It was the moment you finally said, enough, I'm done settling, I'm done waiting, I'm done living below my potential. That's the moment your destiny shifted. Because life bends for the person who has decided. But it resists the person who keeps negotiating with their excuses. Most people aren't actually held back by a lack of talent or a lack of opportunity. No, they're held back by indecision. They're stuck in the middle, halfway between where they are and where they want to be, thinking they're being cautious. But caution without clarity is just another form of fear. And fear is the architect of hesitation. The ironic part is that the second you commit, the fear begins to dissolve. You don't need all the steps. You don't need the entire road map. You just need the courage to take the first bold step and trust yourself enough to take the next one. See, decisions create momentum. Every strong decision you make builds a kind of internal muscle. You become someone who follows through, someone who operates with certainty, someone who knows that no matter what challenges show up and you will find a way through them. When you delay making decisions, you weaken that muscle. You start doubting yourself, questioning your direction, second guessing every opportunity. And every time you hesitate, the universe hears that hesitation. Life responds to energy, to movement, to conviction. When you decide quickly and commit fully, doors open faster, resources appear, people show up, ideas flow, and progress becomes inevitable. Some people think they're protecting themselves by waiting for the perfect time, waiting for the right sign, waiting till they feel ready, but waiting is the slowest form of self-sabotage. You don't wait your way into a new life, you decide your way into one. The biggest breakthroughs happen not after months of planning, but in moments of absolute clarity. Moments where you stop negotiating with your limitations. Moments where you say, I'm done living at level 5 when I know I'm capable of level 10. You want a different body? Decide. You want a different income? Decide. You want a different standard for your relationships, your career, your life? Decide. And when you make that decision, make it fully, mentally, emotionally, physically. Let your actions reflect that choice immediately. Even a small action taken in alignment with a real decision has more power than a year of thinking about it. And let me tell you something, a fast decision doesn't mean a reckless decision. It means you trust yourself enough to choose and trust yourself even more to adapt if the path needs adjusting. Life never punishes speed, it punishes hesitation. Because hesitation creates confusion, and confusion kills momentum. And without momentum, even the best opportunities pass right by you. So when you feel that spark inside you, when something calls to you, when something feels aligned, when something feels like the next step that's not random, that's your intuition speaking. That's your future pulling you forward. Don't smother that spark with overthinking. Don't dilute it by asking for 50 opinions. Don't bury it under fear disguised as logic. Honor it, move on it. Decide in that moment that you're done living in the waiting room of your own life. Everything you've ever wanted is waiting on the other side of a decision you've been avoiding. The moment you decide, your identity shifts. And when your identity shifts, your results shift. Decisions create direction. Direction creates momentum. Momentum creates transformation. And transformation creates the life you were meant to live. Because your destiny doesn't change when you dream. It changes when you decide. Speed is power, not recklessness, not impulsiveness, power. The ability to move, to respond, to to act in the moment without letting fear or doubt choke the opportunity in front of you. Every day, life presents you with windows, small openings where possibility is alive, where momentum is within reach, where a single decision could change everything. But those windows don't stay open forever. They close. And the people who win in life are the ones who step through them before hesitation has a chance to lock the door. The truth is, most people miss their breakthroughs not because they're incapable, but because they're slow. Not physically slow, mentally slow, emotionally slow, spiritually slow. They talk themselves out of things that could elevate them. They negotiate with fear until fear wins. They wait for certainty, for approval, for some invisible green light that's never coming. And by the time they finally move, the moment is past and the spark is gone. You cannot build the life you want with delayed reactions. You build it by moving with conviction, by trusting your gut, and by stepping into action while the energy is high and the possibility is alive. Successful people have trained themselves to move fast because they understand something most people never learn. Decisions made quickly create momentum, and momentum is what carries you over doubt, over obstacles, and over the voices in your head telling you to slow down. When you act fast, you cut off the mental chatter that keeps you stuck. You don't give fear time to build a case. You don't give excuses time to take root. You move before your mind can sabotage your progress. Acting fast doesn't mean you never feel uncertain. It means you don't allow uncertainty to stop you. It means you have built a relationship with your instincts, a deep trust that says, I'll figure it out as I go. Because life doesn't reward the person who has all the answers. Life rewards the person who is willing to move before they have them. The willingness to act without full clarity is one of the greatest advantages you can develop. Most people are waiting for clarity before taking action. But clarity is created by action. When you move, you learn. When you move, you adapt. When you move, you grow. And that's why speed matters. You give yourself the chance to discover what's possible instead of sitting in the dark imagining what might go wrong. Every breakthrough you've ever admired, from careers to relationships to breakthroughs in business, started with someone making a fast decision. Someone who felt the fear, felt the uncertainty, and still said yes. Someone who chose to run toward the opportunity instead of away from it. That's how champions operate. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They create conditions through movement. They trust themselves to handle whatever shows up because their self-belief is bigger than their fear. Think about this. How many times in your life did you know exactly what you wanted to do, but you waited, you hesitated, you second-guessed, you told yourself, let me think about it, and while you were thinking, someone else was acting, someone else was stepping into the moment you were meant to claim. Life doesn't pause because you're uncertain. It keeps moving. And if you want a different level of success, you have to move with it. There's a rhythm to opportunity, a timing, an energy, and when you feel that pull, that spark, that intuitive nudge, you must learn to move instantly. That fast action builds internal certainty. It builds confidence. It builds a pattern of winning because you show yourself over and over again that you can make decisions quickly and handle the consequences. And the more you do it, the more natural it becomes. You stop overthinking. You stop drowning in hesitation. You start trusting the strongest part of you instead of the weakest. Speed is also a message to your mind, your body, your future. It says, I'm serious, I'm committed, I'm not playing small anymore. That message activates a different version of you, a version that doesn't live in fear, a version that doesn't negotiate with doubt, a version that moves first and figures out the details with strength, creativity, and resilience. The people who change their lives are not the people who take the longest to decide. They are the ones who step into action while others are still trying to make sense of their own excuses. They are the ones who get ahead because they refuse to wait for perfect timing. They create timing. They create certainty. They create momentum. Move fast, decide fast, act fast. Because the door to your future won't stay open forever. Perfection is one of the greatest illusions we chase, and it's one of the biggest anchors holding people back from creating real momentum. So many people convince themselves they're being smart or strategic by waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, the perfect alignment of circumstances. But what they're really doing is hiding. They're protecting their ego, protecting their comfort, protecting themselves from the possibility of failing. And in doing that, they sacrifice progress, growth, and opportunity. Perfection feels safe because it gives you a reason not to move. But nothing grows in stillness. Nothing changes when you're stuck in preparation mode, tweaking and adjusting and polishing something that the world never even gets to see. The truth is, perfection is a moving target. You will never hit it because every time you get close, your mind pushes the standard even higher. It whispers, not yet, it's not good enough, you're not ready. And the more you listen to that voice, the more your confidence shrinks. You train yourself to delay. You train yourself to hesitate. You train yourself to overthink every decision until the energy behind your desire dies out. Perfection disguises itself as high standards, but really, it's fear dressed in nice clothes. Progress, on the other hand, is messy. It's imperfect. It's filled with adjustments, trial and error, missteps, and breakthroughs. But progress is alive. Progress has energy. Progress builds confidence because every time you move forward, even if it's imperfect, you prove to yourself that you're capable of evolving. You create a pattern within yourself that says, I take action, I learn, I adapt, I grow. And that pattern becomes more powerful than any fear you once had. Some people wait years to start something they could have begun today. They delay launching the business because the branding isn't perfect. They delay improving their health because they want the perfect plan. They delay walking into a new relationship because they're waiting to be perfectly healed. They delay speaking their truth because they want the message to be perfect. Meanwhile, life keeps passing. The opportunity keeps aging. And the version of them that could have grown through imperfect action never gets born. You don't get confidence from doing things perfectly. You get confidence from doing things repeatedly. You get confidence from showing up even when you don't have all the answers. You get confidence from stepping forward, from seeing yourself take action, from realizing you're capable of far more than your fears suggest. But you only experience that power when you move, not when you wait. Think about every great achievement you admire in others. None of it started perfectly. Businesses launched with flawed products. Athletes began as amateurs, fumbling through the basics. Speakers started with shaky voices and uncertain delivery. Innovations came from trial and error, not flawless execution. Progress sculpted perfection, not the other way around. You refine as you move, not before you move. The world's greatest successes weren't born from perfect beginnings. They are born from imperfect starts followed by relentless commitment. What most people call perfectionism is really avoidance. If you peel back the layers, you'll find fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of looking inexperienced, fear of being vulnerable. But here's the truth. You can't escape vulnerability. You can't escape discomfort. You can't escape the learning curve that comes with growth. You can only delay it. And the longer you delay it, the harder the climb becomes, because now you're not just fighting fear, you're fighting the regret of not starting sooner. When you start before you feel ready, you unlock a different level of strength. You step into a space where resilience grows because you're facing the real world, not your imagination. You adapt because you're forced to. You learn faster because you're engaged. You grow because you're in motion. Nothing transforms you faster than action. At the end of the day, the world doesn't respond to what you plan to do perfectly someday. It responds to what you actually do today. The world rewards execution, not perfection. It rewards courage, not polishing. It rewards motion, not hesitation. So stop telling yourself you need everything aligned before you move. Stop pretending you need more time, more clarity, more certainty. You don't. You need movement. You need willingness. You need the courage to take the imperfect step that leads to the next step, and the next, and the next. Because perfection will keep you waiting your whole life. Progress will change your life. Self-doubt is one of the most dangerous forces in a person's life, not because it screams loudly, but because it whispers quietly. It doesn't slam the door in your face. It gently convinces you not to open it. It doesn't tell you that you'll fail. It asks, are you sure you're good enough? And that one question is enough to freeze people in place for years. Self-doubt isn't loud, but it's effective. It persuades you to hesitate, to shrink, to second-guess your own brilliance. It convinces you to play small, to hide your potential, to wait for a certainty that never comes. And every moment you spend doubting yourself is a moment where your dreams are left defenseless, stalled, and starving. What most people don't realize is that self-doubt isn't a symptom of weakness. It's a sign of potential. You doubt yourself because you know you're meant for more. You feel that tension inside because you're standing at the edge of who you are and who you could become. That edge is always uncomfortable. That edge always asks you to stretch. But instead of stepping forward, most people step back. They retreat. They tell themselves they'll try when they feel ready. They'll start when they have more confidence. They'll move when things feel safer. But confidence doesn't come before action. Confidence comes from stepping into the unknown and proving to yourself that you can handle it. Indecision is self-doubt in motion. Every time you hesitate, you amplify that doubt. Every time you pull back, you reinforce a belief that you're not capable. Every time you delay, you strengthen the very voice that's holding you back. And that voice becomes habitual. It becomes your default setting. You start trusting it more than you trust your own power. You begin believing it's safer to stay where you are, even if where you are is suffocating your potential. That's how dreams die, not from failure, but from slow, silent suffocation under the weight of hesitation. The irony is that self-doubt loses its power the moment you take action. The moment you say, I'm doing this, everything begins to change. Action interrupts doubt. Movement disrupts fear. Progress, even the smallest step, creates a new internal story. You stop telling yourself that you can't, and you start proving to yourself that you can. And this is the part most people miss. You don't need to eliminate self-doubt before you act. You just need to act while it's still there. Courage isn't the absence of doubt, it's moving in spite of it. Every successful person you've ever admired felt self-doubt. They questioned themselves. They worried about failing. They wondered whether they were capable. The difference is they didn't bow to those feelings. They didn't let hesitation become their identity. They used the discomfort as fuel. They saw doubt as a signal that something meaningful was on the other side. They acted anyway, and because they acted, their faith grew stronger than their fear. You must understand this. Your mind is always listening to your actions. When you stop yourself from pursuing something because you're afraid, your mind registers that hesitation as truth. It says, if you didn't act, it must be, because you're not ready. But when you take action, even when you're afraid, your mind forms a completely different belief. It says, if you moved, it must be because you're capable. That's how self-belief is built, not from thinking, not from planning, not from waiting, but from doing. Self-doubt thrives in delay. It grows in the space between who you are and what you know you should be doing. The longer you wait to take action, the louder that doubt becomes, and it disguises itself well. Sometimes it sounds like logic, sometimes it sounds like patience, sometimes it sounds like humility, but underneath all of that, it's fear. Fear of failing, fear of being judged, fear of being exposed, fear of being seen. But guess what? You cannot grow without being seen. You cannot transform without being exposed to challenges. You cannot evolve while hiding behind hesitation. The fastest way to silence self-doubt is to give it no room to speak. Make decisions quickly. Move with intention. Step into opportunities before your fear finds its voice. When you feel that internal resistance, that pull that tells you to wait, that is your moment to act. That is the doorway. That is the line between your old life and your new one. And if you don't step through it, you stay trapped in the same cycle, dreaming big but acting small, wanting change but reinforcing the habits that keep you stuck. You have done hard things before. You've survived moments you thought you never would. You've pushed through situations you once doubted you could handle. That means the power is already in you. Doubt is just the fog. And fog disappears the moment you move through it. Stop letting a whisper decide the direction of your life. Stop letting hesitation steal your potential. Stop giving fear more time than it deserves. Your future doesn't need a perfect version of you. It needs a decisive version of you, a courageous version of you, a version of you that shows up even when the voice of doubt is still talking. Because when you finally silence self-doubt through action, your real life begins. Clarity isn't something you wait for. Clarity is something you create. And the only way you create it is by taking action. People think they need to have everything figured out before they move, but that mindset is what traps them in the same place year after year. They sit there trying to plan their way into certainty, trying to think their way into confidence, trying to analyze every possible outcome before they even take step one. But life doesn't give clarity to thinkers, it gives clarity to doers. You don't learn who you are, what you want, or what's possible for you by standing still. You learn it by stepping into the arena and letting the experience shape you. When you take action, you get feedback. That feedback becomes guidance. That guidance becomes clarity. And that clarity becomes momentum. But none of that happens unless you're willing to move before you feel ready. Most people never experience momentum because they're stuck in mental rehearsal. They want a guarantee. They want the perfect blueprint. They want the road to be mapped out with neon lights pointing the way. But clarity doesn't come from the map. It comes from the journey. The path reveals itself only when you start walking. You will not find your purpose by overthinking. You will not find your strength by staying in your comfort zone. You will not find your next level by waiting for certainty. All of those things show up when you're in motion. When you take that first step, no matter how small it is, you ignite something inside you. You start seeing possibilities you never noticed before. You start feeling a sense of direction, even if you don't fully understand it yet. Movement is what wakes up your intuition. Movement is what sharpens your instincts. Movement is what shows you what resonates and what doesn't, what energizes you and what drains you, what aligns with you and what you've outgrown. And this is where people get it wrong. They believe clarity is supposed to precede action, but it's the opposite. Action is the birthplace of clarity. When you try something, even imperfectly, you immediately know more than you did 5 minutes earlier. Even if the action doesn't give you the outcome you want, it still gives you data. It gives you awareness. It gives you direction. A so-called wrong turn isn't a setback, it's information. It tells you what not to do so you can adjust faster. But if you don't move at all, you don't get any new information. You just sit in your head running in circles, convincing yourself that someday you'll be ready. But someday is just another word for never. Think about a time in your life when you made a decision that felt uncertain, but once you moved, everything started unfolding. Maybe it was a job you took, a relationship you pursued, an idea you experimented with. The moment you acted, things became clearer. You started seeing the next step. You started understanding what needed to change. You started feeling momentum. That's how life works. Movement creates meaning. Movement creates insight. Movement creates direction. People who wait for clarity end up living reactive lives. They spend their time trying to respond to circumstances instead of creating them. But people who take action, bold, imperfect action, they create clarity, they create opportunities, they create momentum. They build a life instead of waiting for one to fall into their lap. And let me tell you something powerful. Overthinking is just fear dressed up as intelligence. It's fear trying to look sophisticated. You're not gaining clarity by thinking about every possible scenario. You're just exhausting yourself. You're feeding doubt. You're watering uncertainty. You're strengthening hesitation. Meanwhile, one action, one small, simple action could have broken the entire cycle. When you move, everything changes. You stop being a spectator of your own life. You become a participant, a creator, a force. You start discovering what works for you instead of guessing. You start learning what you're capable of instead of imagining the limits. And little by little, your confidence grows, not because everything works out perfectly, but because you're proving to yourself that you can handle whatever shows up. This is why decisive people progress faster. It's not because they're smarter or luckier or more talented. It's because they're willing to take action before the path is perfectly clear. And because they move, the path becomes clear. While everyone else is stuck waiting for certainty, they're out there creating certainty through experience, through engagement, through motion. You want clarity in your life? Stop trying to think your way into it. Take action. Try something. Test something. Explore something. Move towards something. Even if you don't feel ready, move anyway, because the longer you wait, the fog gets thicker, the hesitation gets heavier, the doubt gets louder, and the life you want slips further away. But the moment you move even one step, the fog begins to lift, because clarity is earned through action. Commitment is not about knowing every step. It's about deciding with your whole being that you're moving forward and trusting yourself enough to adjust along the way. Most people never get anywhere because they're waiting for the perfect plan, the perfect timeline, the perfect level of confidence. But life doesn't reward perfection, it rewards commitment. It rewards those who say, I'm in, before they have every answer. It rewards those who take ownership of their direction and refuse to let uncertainty become an excuse for hesitation. When you make a real decision, you create a shift inside yourself. You burn the bridge to that old version of you who hesitates, overthinks, and questions every move. You step into a new identity, one that's driven by purpose, not fear. But commitment is not rigid. Commitment is alive, it breathes, it grows. It evolves. Real commitment doesn't chain you to a single strategy. It anchors you to the outcome while giving you the flexibility to adjust your approach as life unfolds. That's what people misunderstand. They think changing direction means they failed. No, changing direction means you're learning. It means you're adapting. It means you're strong enough to pivot without losing the mission. Think about anyone who's ever built anything, meaningful businesses, relationships, breakthroughs, careers, transformations. Not one of them had a straight path. Not one of them executed their initial plan perfectly. They committed first, then they figured it out. They faced setbacks, and instead of questioning the decision, they questioned the strategy. They didn't change the destination, they changed the approach. That's the mindset that turns ordinary people into leaders, achievers, creators. It's not the absence of obstacles that defines their success. It's their ability to commit through the obstacles and keep adjusting until the result matches their intention. Some people stay stuck because they treat every decision like it's permanent. They tell themselves, what if I make the wrong choice? What if it doesn't work out? What if I regret it? And that fear of making the wrong choice keeps them from making any choice. But here's the truth. You don't need the right decision. You need a committed decision. A committed decision becomes the right one because you make it right through your follow-through, your resilience, and your willingness to adjust. You can take almost any path and make it successful if you refuse to quit and you're willing to evolve. The moment you commit, the universe starts rearranging things in your favor. People show up, ideas flow, confidence builds, resources appear, not because they were missing before, but because you were not tuned into them. When you commit, your mind begins to scan the world differently. You stop seeing obstacles as dead ends and start seeing them as puzzles. You stop seeing challenges as reasons to quit and start seeing them as chances to grow. Your entire psychology upgrades the moment you say, I'm doing this, and you mean it. And let's be honest, life is unpredictable. Plans break, opportunities shift, circumstances change. If you're not willing to adapt, you will get left behind. But if you're committed, truly committed, you stay fluid, you stay open, you stay creative, you don't crumble when something doesn't go your way, you pivot, you try a new angle, you reinvent your approach. Commitment isn't a cage, it's the foundation that gives you permission to move freely without losing direction. Some of you have been stuck for years, not because you lack discipline or intelligence, but because you're terrified of committing to something that might require you to grow. But that's the whole point. Commitment forces evolution. It demands that you rise. It demands that you become someone who can handle the life you're asking for. And the moment you accept that growth is not optional, everything becomes easier. You stop fighting the process. You stop resisting the discomfort. You stop interpreting challenges as signs that you're off track. Instead, you recognize that the obstacles are shaping you into the person who can handle the outcome you've committed to. Imagine what would happen if you finally gave yourself permission to commit without needing the full picture. Imagine if you decided right now that you're done dipping your toe into your own life. Imagine if you said, I'm all in, and then trusted yourself enough to adjust when needed. How much faster would your life change? How much further could you go? How much potential would finally be unleashed simply because you stopped dancing around your decisions and started owning them? You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to know everything. You don't need the guarantees. You need the willingness to take the first step and the courage to keep stepping even when the path shifts. Your commitment is the engine. Your adaptability is the steering wheel. And when you combine the two, there is nothing, absolutely nothing you cannot build, become, or overcome. Commit, move, adjust, repeat. That is how breakthroughs are born.